So how I got here is really, I hope it was in me the whole time, but truly going through, I was working for a financial services company where I hated the people, I hated the process, I hated the environment, I hated everything about it, and more than anything, I hated what the client outcome was. And I literally drove through the toll booth, the only toll booth in town, and I watched the green light go on, and I thought, the whole way in, I thought about quitting. I'm just done, I'll do something else. I've been entrepreneurial my whole life, I'll go do something else. And when that green light went off, I actually had this thought, I just invested 50 cents in the day. If I go in and quit and turn around, I just ruined $1. What if I just take the time and sit down? And I literally did the cliche thing, which is pull out a blank sheet of paper. And I took out a sheet of paper and said, how should it work? And I started to write down things that made a lot of sense to me that I think were in me the whole time about going to the end first and putting, people over things and putting wholes over parts and putting actions over words and making a series of choices that I think would be trustworthy. And somebody told me a long time ago that when they're giving away sugar, you ought to sell root canals. And it really stuck with me, and I didn't know what he meant for a long time, but then it hit me that this is a world that, there's nobody has the wind at their back anymore. There's sort of lots of struggles to go around, and while most of the people around me have what have been called rich people problems, there's still lots of problems to go around. So if you went to the end, how do you fix these problems? How do you be of real service? How do you be of help? I literally wrote it down on a piece of paper and started to live that way. And not very much after that, I left the firm and went to a different firm and carved out a place where I could do those things. And I think the outcome for everybody's been really good. So when you meaningfully engage with somebody in a deep personal way, as an element of service, it can't help but change you. You have to change. You're totally impacted by the things they're telling you. The realness, the authenticity of who they are and what they've been through not only impact them, but impacts you and then all of the people around you, because this is no offense to any women out there, but it's an I got a guy world, right? Hey, I need somebody to help me with this, right? And we also answer the same, well, I got a guy. Whether that's a roofer or a minister or a mechanic or whatever it is, when you deeply know what those people are about, it has to change you. It changes them because it's just a more authentic experience. It's a sense of being with them and not to them or at them, but you're deeply engaged in a really personal way. And it has to change you. You live their lives with them and they live yours with you. So in writing down these things on a piece of paper, there was a belief, a faith, if you will, that everything sort of flows back. And I can't say it's a straight line. It's not a quid pro quo. If I do this, I'll get that world. But it really is sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the minute you do something good for somebody else, you feel good about it. They feel good, and you start to feel good about it. And somehow, in a non-direct way, somehow the phone rings or an email pops up, and it's somebody else looking for the things you want to do that support you. So you put this energy out, you put out this service, you put out this, I don't know what to call it. You put out service, you put out energy, you put out ideas, and somehow it all comes back to you, and it may come back in a way that's not necessarily direct, but you end up with deeper friendships and better relationships. And it's a whole world now that's predicated on real relationships. And if you want your life to be better, you should just go out and do trustworthy things. When you start to really provide service with the people on the other side coming first all the time, when you've really chosen to put yourself second, third, fourth, fifth, and be incredibly sort of patient, if you will, with building these relationships to where they're really deeply seated and really trusted. You have both these brief epiphanies, like, how that happened really quick. That was kind of cool. And then you have these longer sort of transformational things to the point where it's just ingrained in you. It's almost like a golf swing, and I don't have a good one, but these people talk about muscle memory, that if you do it enough, it'll finally start to feel repeatable, that it just feels like the normal thing to do. And in the beginning, it doesn't feel normal. It's your hands are wrong, your stance is wrong, your shoulders are wrong. Everything seems awkward. And you feel to some degree like you're intruding into their lives. But when you get brave about it and you trust the swing, then all of a sudden they're trusting you too. And it's not an intrusion, it's a welcome intrusion of figuring out a way to say things to people that are not social bromides. Hi, how are you? Have a nice day. Those things are, it's nice, it's fine, yeah, it's great. It's not good enough anymore. You really have to understand who the person is on the other side, and that they have pain in their life or maybe joy in their life, and either way you ought to share it. So being charitable often gets tied back to, time, talent, and treasure. For most people, or most people in society who have a need, especially an aching social need, they go right to treasure. It has to be about the money. We've got to feed people, we've got to clothe people, we've got to house people, we have to revamp a company, we have to get a career back on track, we have to rebuild something. And everybody goes to the money part. But the reality is, if you start to put in the time, and if you have any talent at all, and all talents are needed, as long as you put in the time and it's humble and it's authentic and it's real, then the treasure seems to flow. Whether it's easier to reach into your own pocket and give, because you've got this relationship with whatever this cause or these people are or that person is, that's pretty easy. But when you really believe in what's going on, and you really understand what's going on, and it's not sort of a check-the-box charity thing, then the people around you get the authenticity of it, and they all reach into their pocket. So, I have a client that has some sort of special needs, and we talk about loaves and fishes management, and we laugh about that there never seems to be enough except for when we need it. And when we need it, there's more than enough. And some of that is making good choices, and some of that is math, and some of that is just believing that if you do the right things, it'll flow to you. So the time, talent, and treasure are all linked. Sometimes the time and the talent are worth way more than the treasure. That I'd rather have you engaged in what the problem is or trying to fix the problem than actually writing a check and then just dropping in the money. But if you're really engaged in it, if you really get it, if you're with us on whatever that cause is, then all three get to be really easy. But you have to put in the time. I don't think there's any limits to this, right? I think the universal promise that's made to us is that the more we put out, the more there'll be. And it appears to me that that's true, that almost your whole life can be explained by the three characters in the Ice Age movies. And so anybody who's seen those or has little kids will get this. There's this little sort of squirrel-like character who's chasing after this acorn with his whole heart. That's all he wants is this one little acorn, while his two partners, a mastodon and a saber-toothed tiger, are sort of slowly marching on their life. And it's a real example of that person who's just clutching after that one thing is really just getting the heck beat out of them in the whole process, and they only end up, if they're lucky, with that one thing. But the folks who do it together, who do it in a community, and can see sort of the natural abundance that's out there, they just keep plodding along, quietly, humbly, doing their thing, and they end up with everything they need. It may not be everything they want, but it's everything they need, and then probably plus some. I think there's lots of people who miss out on a really cool thing by not living in this way, even for a little while. I think for a lot of people it's hard. We always put ourselves first. This is a me world, an I world. Let me talk about me. And the reality is, the smartest guy in the room usually says the least. And the most important person in the room is probably doing the most. And if you can find people and get people around you or act that way for a little while, where you're the one who's quiet and doing, you really can move mountains. There's a lot that can happen. So the people who miss out on that and just run on the treadmill constantly, I sort of feel sorry for them because they're not getting it. And they're living a life where they're pretending to be something and they're trying to be a role or they're trying to have a look, and they're missing out on the authenticity of doing the work and serving humbly and then creating a greater outcome for other people, which by the very act of doing it, you've created a better outcome for yourself. I am tremendously hopeful that the generations coming behind me, I'll use my own kids and their friends, they get this better than anybody. They grew up with true connectivity, with true social media. It's a natural thing for them to be posting on Facebook or using Instagram or any of the other social media platforms. I think they are technologically driven possibly, or socially driven, to be better at it than we are. This is a really special generation. It's probably the first generation in America where their generation will live worse than the generation before it. So I'm a history major, so you got to endure this for a minute. Every generation before us did something great. You go far enough back, they freed us from the British. You go far enough back, they fought the Civil War. After the Civil War, they built the railroads. They built an incredible country and an unbelievable manufacturing base all through the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way through. And we built this incredible society in a really short period of time. And then we turned it on its head and we saddled these kids with $17 trillion in debt in a low growth environment where finding a job today is harder than it's ever been. And on top of that, everything you do can be recorded or shared or put out. And if there's ever been a generation that is almost forced to be authentic and forced to be real, they can't have anything more than a point of view of their own life, because everybody around them will comment on it. And they'll be called losers and posers and all kinds of things that I'm generationally inept in explaining using their words, but they'll define it. And because of that, I think they have to be real. Pretense has to go away. If you're a pretender in this generation, you will be outed in minutes, in absolute minutes. So I think we have a generation that gets it. I think we have a generation that wants to get it, and I think they know they have a big problem on their hands, which is trying to figure out a way to leave this place a better place for their children. So I think so the future of giving is probably really bright. The future of service is really bright. This is a world that needs more people who think this way. And I say that with some humility. I'm not patting myself on the back for trying to live a certain way. There's lots of people who do it. There's lots of people who do it better than I do it. I do it as best I can. What I can say to what I have said to my kids, what I've said to the people around me is, I'm just trying to be the best version of me I can be. And that evolves over time. And I've said that to my kids, and I would say it to them again, and they'll probably hear it several more times. There's some really simple rules that you need to follow, and because simple rules do get followed. Complex rules get ignored. So, really simple rules for my kids or their friends or the people who have to put up with me where we work. I just say it over and over again. Be the best version of you. That's a pretty simple rule. And then this is sort of silly in a way, but figure out the right thing to do and then do it is a really simple rule. And most of the time we figure out, try and solve a problem by how does this make me look, or how does this make me money, or how does this impact whatever, instead of just saying what's the right thing to do and go do it. So, with any luck at all, my kids have seen me do it. They've seen me lead by example. That I don't really have to talk to them too much about this, because I know there's lots of nights when I've left them and said, hey, I got to do this thing for children's healthcare, or I'm going to do a thing for junior achievement, or I'm going to do a thing for Emory University's palliative care group, or whatever the other causes that we're involved in. Oh my God, Hands On Atlanta. I mean, there's been a million projects because there's a million needs. I think they've seen that. And I'm pretty comfortable that they get it. They live that way. I don't really have any doubt that they live that way. And I'm really confident that the people around them live that way. So, there may be two worlds, those who are willing to serve and those who are not. And I think the willing to serve world gets bigger every day.